A witch.
So, this is one of those endings that doesn't just wrap things up, it kind of lingers with you. Because Hokum looks like a straightforward haunted hotel horror movie on the surface, but by the time it ends, you realize it was never really about the witch or even the killings. It was always about guilt, forgiveness, and whether someone can actually move on from the worst thing they've ever done. Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. Let's start with Ohm, because everything in this story revolves around him. Played by Adam Scott, Ohm is introduced as this deeply withdrawn, almost emotionally numb author who's clearly carrying something heavy. From the very beginning, you can feel that he's not just sad, he's haunted. And not in the typical horror sense, but in that very human way where memories don't leave you alone. That trip to the Irish hotel, it's not random. It's him trying to reconnect with something pure from his past, something before everything went wrong. But of course, this being a horror movie, the hotel isn't just a place of nostalgia. It's a trap, and that's where the witch comes in.
A witch.
What the witch really represents. Now, the film does something really interesting with the witch, because it sets her up like she's going to be the main villain. You hear the creepy stories, you see the abandoned bridal suite, and you're told she drags souls into this horrifying afterlife. Classic horror setup, right? But as the movie goes on, it becomes clear that she's not exactly evil in the traditional sense. She's more like a force, something inevitable, something you can delay, maybe even avoid for a while, but never truly defeat. The old hotel owner reveals that she's been contained in that room for years, which sounds reassuring at first. But if you think about it, it's actually terrifying, because it means she's always there, waiting. And anyone who ends up in that room isn't just unlucky, they're being pulled into something much bigger than themselves. And when you look at how she interacts with Ohm, it becomes even clearer. She doesn't just attack him physically, she attacks his mind. She brings up his past. She forces him to relive the one moment he's been trying to bury his entire life. That's not random. That's the point. The witch isn't just death. She's the embodiment of everything Ohm has been running from.
I think there's someone down here.
Mal, the real monster of the story. Here's where the movie flips your expectations in a really satisfying way. Because while the witch is terrifying, she's not the one making choices. She's not the one committing crimes out of fear or selfishness. That's Mal. At first, Mal comes off like this awkward, slightly clueless hotel manager. You don't really think much of him, but then the truth starts to unravel, and suddenly everything changes. Fiona didn't just disappear. Mal killed her. And the reason makes it even worse. She was pregnant with his child. And instead of facing the consequences, instead of owning up to it, he chose the worst possible option. He drugged her, dragged her into the one place he knew no one would come looking, and left her there to die. Whether it was starvation or the witch that got her doesn't even matter at that point. The cruelty is the same. What makes Mal such an effective villain isn't just what he did, it's how little it affects him. He doesn't carry guilt the way Ohm does. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't hesitate. When he realizes Ohm and Jerry are getting close to the truth, his immediate response is to eliminate them too. And that's the key contrast of the film. Ohm is drowning in guilt over something that was an accident. Mal feels almost nothing over something that was completely intentional. So when the witch finally takes Mal, it doesn't feel like a random horror moment. It feels like justice. Not heroic justice, not cinematic revenge, but something more primal, like the universe correcting itself.
Demons do exist.
Ohm's guilt, the heart of the film. Now this is where Hokum really hits hard. Because the scariest part of the movie isn't the witch or the murders. It's the truth about Ohm. All those hints, all those fragments of memory, they finally come together in that one devastating reveal. As a child, Ohm accidentally killed his mother. He was playing with his father's gun, something he shouldn't have had access to. And in a moment that probably lasted less than a second, his entire life was destroyed. And you can see how that shaped him. The distance from his father, the depression, the way he seems almost disconnected from the world. He's been punishing himself for years, maybe even decades. What's really powerful is that the film doesn't treat this as something simple. It doesn't just say it was an accident, move on, because that's not how guilt works, especially not that kind of guilt. Instead, it shows how deeply it's embedded in him, to the point where he's almost ready to end his own life. That scene where he tries to hang himself isn't just a shocking moment, it's the culmination of everything he's been carrying, and the witch feeds on that. She uses it against him. She turns his own memories into weapons. The moment that changes everything. But then we get to the turning point, the scene that completely redefines the entire film. When Ohm is trapped by the witch, it feels like this is it. This is where his story ends. Not with redemption, not with closure, but with him being consumed by the very thing he's been running from. And then his mother appears. This is where Hokum shifts from horror into something almost spiritual, because instead of accusing him, instead of reminding him of what he did, she does the exact opposite. She comforts him. He apologizes, not in a dramatic, over-the-top way, but in that raw, broken way that feels real. Like he's been waiting his entire life to say those words, and she forgives him. That moment is everything, because it's not just about his mother forgiving him. It's about him finally allowing himself to be forgiven. That's something he's never done before, and it's that acceptance that gives him the strength to escape. Even Fiona's brief reawakening plays into this idea. It's like the world itself is acknowledging that something has changed, that Ohm isn't the same person he was when he walked into that hotel.
One of the members of staff is missing.
The Conquistador story, a mirror of Ohm. Now this part is easy to overlook, but it's actually one of the most important elements of the film. Ohm's Conquistador trilogy isn't just background detail, it's a direct reflection of his mental state. At the beginning, the ending he writes is bleak. The Conquistador kills his young companion just to survive. It's cold, selfish, and completely devoid of hope. And then he wanders off to die alone. That's not just storytelling. That's how Ohm sees the world. That's how he sees himself. But after everything he goes through, after facing the witch, after confronting his past, that ending changes. He rewrites it. Now the Conquistador can't go through with it. He stops. He chooses compassion instead of survival at any cost. And more importantly, he apologizes. That's the key. Because that's exactly what Ohm needed to do. Not just say the words, but mean them. To acknowledge what happened without letting it define him forever.
Can't see him.
The ending, why it's surprisingly hopeful. By the time we reach the final scenes, Ohm is in the hospital. And on the surface, everything seems calm, but the details matter. He turns down alcohol, something he relied on throughout the film. He's kinder to even those he dismissed earlier. These aren't huge, dramatic changes. They're small, subtle, but they mean everything because they show that he's trying, that he's moving forward. And that's why the ending feels so different from what you'd expect from a horror movie. It's not about defeating the evil. The witch is still out. Death is still inevitable. The darkness hasn't disappeared, but Ohm isn't afraid of it anymore. He's faced it, he's accepted, and most importantly, he's forgiven himself. And that's what makes Hokum stick. It's not just a story about a haunted hotel or a terrifying witch. It's about what it means to carry guilt and what it takes to finally let it go. Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what's waiting in the dark. It's what's been inside you all along. And Hokum dares to ask, what happens when you finally confront it?
There are worse things than strangers out there, Yank.
Our nerdy thoughts. And yeah, that's what makes Hokum hit so differently. It's not just about surviving the horror. It's about facing what's been haunting you long before the nightmare even began. Ohm didn't just escape the witch, he escaped himself, and that's way more powerful. But I'm curious, did the ending work for you, or did you expect something dark? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you enjoy deep dives like this, make sure you stick around, because we've got a lot more stories to unravel.
A witch.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.